Alright guys, Wes here, welcome back to the channel. So as you know, Elden Ring is the single most awarded video game of all time, and for great reason. From Software perfectly translated their Dark Souls formula into a massive open world game with an amazing new universe and story for fans to get lost in. The first paid expansion, Shadow of the Erdtree, was confirmed over a year ago, but we finally got a trailer and a release date this year. And with how big of a game Elden Ring is, how will that compare to the upcoming expansion? We have a lot to talk about in this video, guys. We're going to talk about Messmer the Impaler, the next reveal trailer, and more. So check the video chapters for easy viewing. Also, don't forget to enter the PS5 giveaway. If you're looking to enter, it's super easy. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel, comment your Twitter handle, tweet me proof that you're subscribed, or send it to my Discord, and that will enter you for a chance to win. Now, with how massive a game like Elden Ring was, it's only natural that the expansion is equally massive. We know that it's going to be the biggest From Software DLC to date, which is honestly pretty insane whenever you consider just how huge some of the Dark Souls DLCs were. But does that mean that this is going to be the biggest video game DLC of all time? It's already been confirmed that Shadow of the Erdtree is going to have more gameplay content than a lot of full price titles nowadays. But then again, the same could be said about the other notable expansions from gaming history, like Phantom Liberty for Cyberpunk 2077, episodes from Liberty City for GTA 4, Hearts of Stone, Blood and Wine for The Witcher 3, and so on and so forth. There has been a lot of huge expansions in the history of gaming, but I think there's a pretty solid chance that Shadow of the Erdtree tops all of them. From Software goes hard with literally everything that they do, and if they're already telling us this is the biggest DLC that they've made, I think it's very possible that they set a gaming record. Not to mention, if you look at the price point of Shadow of the Erdtree, it costs $40, which is over half the price of the base game. So if we just take that price point alone, then that should mean that the DLC is at least half of the size of Elden Ring. Now, the DLC could be priced at that range because of Bandai Namco, or it could be that the DLC has so much content packed into it that it justifies the $40 price point. So moving right along, we know the main Lumen antagonist in the Elden Ring DLC is going to be Messmer the Impaler, which is probably the coolest name for a video game villain of 2024. But after having some time to dig into the lore a bit, the Elden Ring community has started discussing a theory of how Messmer is connected to Miquella. The theory suggests that Messmer is actually Miquella's brother and is another child of Marika and Radagon. At one point in the trailer, we hear Messmer say the words, "Mother, wouldst thou truly lordship sanction in one so bereft of light?" Now, while we don't know the identity of this mother, this line would make a lot of sense if it were Marika. There's also another point in the trailer where an unknown voice says this, and I quote, "Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death in the embrace of Messmer's flame," which would also make sense if he was alluding to Marika. From Software loves their cryptic storytelling, so we probably shouldn't expect the plot of Shadow of the Erdtree to be spilled out to us, but hopefully this theory is true, because I think there is a ton of awesome story potential there. There's been a lot of discussion on whether or not Messmer the Impaler will be the final boss of the DLC, or will it be similar to the base game where you technically have to beat Radagon and then phase 2 to Elden Beast, and eventually Malenia as the final boss of the game. For the DLC, I'm thinking that we're going to have that same similar concept, where first you'll go up against Messmer the Impaler, and then defeating him will unleash the ultimate villain of Miquella, which will be the final boss of the Elden Ring DLC. This part is obviously just speculation. Definitely curious to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Now, following the reveal of Shadow of the Erdtree, a lot of gamers were wondering if they should be preparing for the DLC in some way, perhaps by replaying the base game, or if they should wait until after the DLC for their next playthrough. Now, if you've never actually played Elden Ring before, I would actually recommend waiting to play it until after Shadow of the Erdtree releases so you can have an absolutely massive first experience with the game. I mean, guys, let's be honest here. If you've played a ton of Elden Ring already, you're probably wishing you had the option to experience it for the first time again, especially if that first experience would be with a bunch of additional content and storytelling. Like, that right there is such a privileged position to be in, where you've not experienced Elden Ring before, and then you're going to start playing the base game and the DLC all together at once. Like, that would be an out-of-body experience, and I envy you if you've not played Elden Ring. And like I talked about before, in case you weren't totally aware of just how huge this expansion is going to be, there are several gameplay details confirmed already that are going to be game changers for both new and old players alike. It's been confirmed that there are going to be 8 new weapon categories along with a ton of new individual weapons. There are also going to be a number of new spells for magic users, as well as the new option to apparently use martial arts in place of an actual weapon, which I think was the coolest part of the trailer, at least in terms of combat. I'll also admit that a rapid fire crossbow like the one in the trailer seems like it's going to be a pretty ridiculous addition of the game. Like, being able to dish out that much range damage that quickly is inevitably going to end up becoming a new playstyle within the Elden Ring community, and it could possibly change the game for PvP as well. It's also been confirmed that there are going to be upwards of 10 new bosses in Shadow of the Erdtree, and the difficulty of some of them has been compared to the base game's fight with Malenia. So it should be obvious why so many are saying that this is going to be the biggest video game expansion of all time, and it's certainly going to have more content than most new $70 open world games. Now, with that being said, if you want to take the opposite approach and be as prepared as possible for Shadow of the Erdtree's release, there's a few good ways to do it. Now, it is worth mentioning that there's going to be a completely new leveling system within the DLC, so if you're a player that's already got hundreds and if not thousands of hours on Elden Ring with character builds that are like fully stacked out, you're not going to be able to go into the DLC and just one-shot every boss, so no amount of prepping will get you ready to face the challenges of the Land of Shadows. However, if you are a new player, you should probably familiarize yourself with the fundamentals of Elden Ring's combat, which honestly, that's probably the best way to start. Now, before you can actually play the DLC, you will have to beat Mohg, Lord of Blood, so if you haven't done that yet, I recommend doing that before the release. We also don't really know how the enemies are going to differentiate themselves from those of the base game, but we do know that From Software loves making their expansions noticeably harder than the base game, so you shouldn't be expecting to cruise through this DLC, unless of course you're him and you're ready for any challenge. Again though, if you're a brand new Elden Ring player, I recommend waiting until the expansion is released to go through it for the very first time, because that's an experience that a lot of Elden Ring players only dream of getting. Also, we're like 2 months away from the DLC launching. It took me like 4 to 5 months to really sink my teeth into this game and get to the point of beating it. So if you're a new player, do not rush the experience of Elden Ring. Do as little Googling as possible unless you really need to cheese an enemy, and just enjoy the experience. It's a once in a lifetime experience and you are not going to want to rush it. The first playthrough of Elden Ring is the best by far, obviously, so just wait until the DLC drops and then enjoy it all in its entirety. So next up, it's very likely that we are going to be getting another trailer for Shadow of the Erdtree before the official launch, hopefully one that focuses just on the gameplay itself. I'm fine with not learning a single thing about the story or lore until the release, but I would like to see some of the gameplay of the new DLC. So with the release date for Shadow of the Erdtree set for June 21st, and with Summer Game Fest recently confirmed for June 7th, exactly 2 weeks before launch day, this would be the perfect opportunity for them to release a launch trailer for Shadow of the Erdtree, or even do a raw gameplay presentation at the event. If From Software is looking for a perfect opportunity to show off new material, that would probably be it. That said, it's also possible that we end up getting a second Shadow of the Erdtree trailer or gameplay presentation before the end of this month, because some have speculated that Bandai Namco is going to want more Elden Ring DLC material out in the public before their next earnings call, which is currently scheduled for the start of May. Elden Ring is one of the most successful games that Bandai Namco has published, and From Software is a huge moneymaker for them, so naturally they're going to want to show off as much of that as possible to investors. Generating some additional Shadow of the Erdtree hype right before an earnings call probably looks really appealing to the higher ups at Bandai Namco and investors in general, so I think there's a good chance that happens. But assuming that this rumor doesn't come true, I think you could take that as more or less confirmation of there being something cooking for a Summer Game Fest event. But now, one of the most important questions we can ask about the plot of Shadow of the Erdtree is, will this tease the future? Or rather, are we going to be getting confirmation of either a second DLC or a proper sequel? Now, it's been reported that Shadow of the Erdtree started development as 2 different expansions, but the decision was made eventually to mash them into one gigantic expansion, which is part of the reason why it's taken so long to be released, and also why it's potentially going to be the biggest DLC in gaming history. So if there was going to be a teaser of some kind in Shadow of the Erdtree's ending, it will not be about a second expansion, but I do think if there is a future sequel to Elden Ring, I think this DLC could serve as a pretty good place to like leave little breadcrumbs for the community to speculate on for a possible sequel. There's already plans for making Elden Ring a franchise similar to the Dark Souls franchise. I would personally love to see a teaser or some kind of breadcrumbs that lead to something else. Like for instance, what Nintendo did with Breath of the Wild is they added different zonai structures and left a ton of teasers for the sequel in the base game experience. So it'd be kind of wild if From Software did the same thing with Elden Ring's DLC. Now, it could be that we don't even get an Elden Ring 2 and this is our final experience with Elden Ring, which would be really unfortunate, but only time will tell. Either way though, guys, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section. Are you excited for Shadow of the Erdtree? How do you plan on preparing for the DLC? And who do you think is going to be the final boss of Shadow of the Erdtree? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section. Hit the like button, subscribe with your notifications turned on, and until next time, this has been Wes, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.